Hey, welcome back to the channel. Big Dog Brett, thanks so much for tuning in. Don't forget to hit like, subscribe, and share. Trying to get 5,000 members by the end of the season, 5,000 subscribers, excuse me. And I can only do it with you guys' help. And you can do that by subscribing if you're not subscribed, or by sharing and help promoting the channel. It's greatly appreciated. Well, today we're going to be talking about the #1 ranked Georgia versus the #11 ranked University of Kentucky. Both of these teams are the only two teams left in the SEC East that are undefeated still, and that is going to come to an end this Saturday. So while I am a Georgia homer, while I do enjoy watching Georgia football, I do try to be as objective as possible. Now, I know a lot of Kentucky fans are going to jump down in the comment section and say, hey, the only reason I'm saying this stuff is because I'm a Georgia fan. I try to pull the analytics. I try to look at it objectively. It's not always easy because I'm a fan. But I think after we go through it, you'll agree, at least my point of view, I think you'll agree, this is going to be bad. So without further ado, we're going to get into it right after this. All right, guys. So I put together a slide for you guys so we can kind of go through things together. A lot of times, if I'm talking about statistics and I'm just talking and as I'm going, even though I understand everything I just said, most people have a little bit of difficulty retaining it. I know it because I just looked at it for 2 hours. But if you guys are dependent on me to give you this information, I think a little bit of visual tends to help a little bit. So I'm going to give you that, guys, right now. Hopefully. Yep. Okay, so here's some of the metrics I'm going to look at: average points per game, points allowed, yards per game, yards per pass, yards per rush, third down conversion, team sacks, and average completion percentage. And each team is going to get a check mark for being better than the other one, or and when we get to the end, we're going to count them up and we're going to make our decision based on that. So let's go ahead and talk about average points per game. Currently, both teams are pretty decent. Kentucky's averaging 31 points a game. Georgia's averaging 39.8, so nearly a 10-point difference. And some arguments could be made here that Georgia has played a few more difficult teams in Arkansas, and yeah. So when you're looking at some of these other things, keep in mind that this is based, not just on how many points we have, but also the teams we've played. Let's address the bulldog in the room here. How many points per game? Georgia has only allowed 5 points per game. Kentucky has allowed 17.8. 17.5. Now, which is not bad. That's really not bad. That's kind of what you would look at as saying most teams can score at least 17 or 18 points on any team. And that's kind of what you're seeing. A good defense, but not a great defense. Georgia has only allowed 10 points in the last three games. So Georgia's averaging currently in the past 3 games about 3.3 yards a game, basically a field goal. 2 of those games against SEC opponents were complete shutouts. So you got to look at this and go, this is a pretty stout Georgia defense, and they've been playing some ranked teams, so you can't really say who have they played because they have played some ranked teams. So again, the edge here in points allowed would go to Georgia. Now let's talk about average yards per game. Kentucky's averaging 411 yards per game, which is good for about 60th in the country, and this is out of 130 teams, so that's roughly about half. Georgia's averaging 432 yards a game, so that's good for 48. So you say, well, Big Dog, that's only a 21-yard difference. You're right. You're absolutely right. It's only a 21-yard difference, but it's still a difference. And we're looking at which one is better. So that check mark's going to have to go to Georgia. Now, say, well, how are they getting those yards? Let's take a look. Georgia's average yards per pass is 9.61. That's and they're getting about 235 yards per game, and that's good for 63rd in the nation. Now we look at Kentucky. Kentucky is averaging Kentucky is 97th with 8.35 per attempt and just under 200 yards per game at 197.7. So there's a big difference here. There's about a 40-yard difference here. So that's pretty substantial. So in the passing game, we would have to give the edge to Georgia again. Now you kind of see how this is starting to stack up. So let's look at Georgia versus Kentucky in the average yards per rush. Georgia's averaging about 4.68 yards per rush and 197 per game. That's good for 34th in the country. Not bad. Kentucky is averaging 5.54, 200 per rush, and 214 per game. That's good for 23rd in the nation. So that's really a pretty solid number. You're in the upper echelon here. You're inside of the top 25, as they would say, in rushing. So not bad. So, there is a difference there. There's less than a yard difference per rush, but there is a difference. So slight edge, going to give out to Kentucky. Yay! You guys got on the board and something. I apologize, couldn't help myself. So now we're going to look at average third down conversion. Kentucky's coming in at 32nd in the country at about 45%. Georgia's coming in at 17th in the country at 48%. Now that number can really be a big factor later on. One is 45%, one's 48%. You say, but that's only a 3% difference. Trust me, that can be a big difference later. Looking at the fact that some of these teams that Kentucky has played has had nowhere near the defense that Georgia has, this is going to be a huge factor. I'm going to come back to the average yards and rushing per game. We'll come back to that here in a minute because that plays a big factor here in a moment. Team sacks. Georgia has accumulated 22 sacks this season, which is more sacks than Georgia has had in some years, in recent years, and we're only halfway through the season. You can imagine where that puts Georgia. Now Kentucky has, I believe they got 10 sacks, I think, total. That puts them for 44th in the country, which is not bad, but Georgia's more than double that. So we'd have to say the team sack edge is going to go to Georgia. So there's a big difference here in what we're seeing. Now, there is certainly a lot that can be said here as far as the Georgia's defense, especially on the rushing side of the ball. Georgia is only allowing roughly 54% average of an opponent's run, and I believe that Kentucky is allowing about 74%. So if Georgia cuts their rush game in half, that's going to be pretty bad. They're going to average about 2.5 yards a carry. That's going to force them to lean on their offense and passing game, and that's going to be pretty bad. Now, when we talk about turnovers, Georgia is ranked 39th in the country as far as where they fall when they, in the turnover margin. Kentucky is ranked 126th out of 130 teams. So that's pretty rough. That's going to be pretty difficult to deal with. Now you got one more category here that I want to talk about, and it's because whenever you look at the completion percentage, the completion percentage is huge here. 69% completion percentage for Georgia, nearly 70%, and 64% for Kentucky. That's average. That's an average, decent throwing football team versus Georgia being at 70%. You're starting getting a little more towards the elite. Now you may say, well, Big Dog, it's only a 5% difference. Well, it may look like only a 5% difference, but when you couple in the fact of the average pass per game being 10 yards, that can be a huge factor in a game. That can keep a third down alive. That can really move the ball forward. To me, if you're looking at the teams that Kentucky has played against versus the team Georgia has played against, Georgia's stats stacking up this well against ranked teams versus Kentucky having played just Florida, and we're really kind of starting to see Florida's not that great of a team. Their numbers, while close in some categories, are almost padded compared to what Georgia's seeing. This is Georgia's numbers after playing against a powerhouse defense like Arkansas. So, really, really interesting how this turned out. Georgia playing like they did against Auburn, and looking at Kentucky's biggest run they've had in a number of years. It's going to be a really interesting game. But as you can see, the check marks don't miss. I mean, this is just a ton of check marks for Georgia. This is a ton of I won't say inadequacies, but not measuring up to the task against Georgia. This is going to prove to be pretty difficult for the Kentucky Wildcats. And that's just looking at the stats. That's not saying, Georgia's got a better quarterback or, anything along those lines. I mean, that's just looking at pure stats. So we're going to take a moment here, and we are going to look at some stats. I'm going to give you guys a moment to kind of absorb some of that information real quick. So let's bring it back. Here we go. So looking at some of the things that's going on, you're looking at Georgia has a passing percentage through Stetson Bennett, who's throwing at 70%. JT Daniels throws at 76%. This is, and they've only been sacked a total of 3 times all season. Georgia's been sacked 3 times all season against some of the best defense in the country. You've got Will Levis, who's throwing at 54%. If Bo Allen comes in, he's throwing at 57%, and they've been sacked 10 times. Georgia is going to live in that backfield, and it's not just because their offensive line is not going to be able to stand up to Georgia. They're down players. They're not down players on the offensive line, but they're down players on the defensive line. So it's going to be pretty difficult for them to hold up to the wear and tear that Georgia's going to put on them. The defense is not going to be able to stop the Georgia offense, and it's just not because they're missing 2 of their starters right out of the gate. That's going to put more pressure on the offense because the defense is not going to be able to do much as they normally would. So to me, this is going to be a pretty rough game for Kentucky. Now I'm going to put out a video later. Actually, I'm just going to go ahead and do it now. Normally I do like a hype and hate video, which I may yet still do that because there's some idiots on TikTok, and excuse my language, but their behavior is fitting of the title, who in other social media, not just TikTok, but there's some guys out there that you never see from, you never hear from, and they're just in the super troll mode. So I'm going to go ahead and give you my prediction in this game. I think Georgia's going to look to ball out. I think the offense is going to overpower their defense, and I really think that you're going to see Georgia walk away with this game. Now, I'm going to give Kentucky a little bit of credit, and I'm going to say you guys get 10 points. I'm going to give you 10 points. I think one of them will be a trash touchdown at the end of the game, but I think Georgia's going to score 41. So my prediction for the game is Georgia 41, Kentucky 10. You guys have a great day. Don't forget to hit like and subscribe, especially if you made it this far. I really appreciate you guys. Have a great day. God bless. Go Dogs.